The training mat smelled like sweat and determination. 50 cadets from 20 different species filled the combat hall, practicing the techniques their instructors had demonstrated. Some moved with natural grace, others struggled with coordination. Lieutenant Owen Davis walked between them, correcting stances and offering quiet advice. He stopped beside a large reptilian cadet named Ron. The Vorath species stood nearly 7 feet tall, with scaled skin that could deflect most physical strikes. Ron was attempting a defensive stance, but his weight distribution was wrong. "Cadet Ron, shift your rear foot back 3 inches, Owen said. "You're too forward heavy." Ron glanced down at the human instructor. Owen stood only 5'10", lean and unimpressive by Vorath standards. "This stance works fine for my people," Ron replied, his voice carrying across the hall. Owen kept his tone neutral. "It works until someone sweeps your front leg. Then you're on the ground. My people do not fall easily, Lieutenant." Several cadets stopped practicing to watch the exchange. Owen felt the tension building but maintained his calm demeanor. He had dealt with prideful cadets before. Most species in the coalition had longer military traditions than humanity. Many viewed humans as newcomers playing at war. "Would you like me to demonstrate?" Owen asked. Ron's eyes narrowed. In Vorath culture, such a question was a challenge. But this was a training exercise, and refusing would show weakness. "Proceed." Owen moved into position. He was smaller, lighter, and lacked the natural armor that made Vorath such formidable warriors. To the watching cadets, the outcome seemed obvious. Owen reached for Ron's arm, moving slowly so the cadet could learn the technique. Ron tried to resist using his superior strength. Owen adjusted, redirected, and suddenly Ron was airborne. The Vorath hit the mat hard, the impact driving the air from his lungs. The hall went silent. Owen extended his hand to help Ron up. The gesture was meant as courtesy, a sign that this was training, not combat. But Ron saw it as mockery. He ignored the offered hand and stood on his own, his face flushed with shame. "Again," Ron demanded. "We need to move on to the next technique," Owen said. "Everyone pair up and practice what we just," I said again. Ron's voice was louder now, aggressive. Owen met the cadet's eyes. He recognized the look. Pride wounded, honor questioned. Dangerous combination. "Cadet, return to your position with the others." Ron's hands clenched into fists. "You made me look weak in front of everyone." "You're making yourself look worse right now," Owen replied quietly. "Stand down." For a moment, Owen thought the cadet would comply. Then Ron's lips pulled back, showing rows of sharp teeth. "My people are warriors. We have fought for thousands of years. What are humans? Soft creatures who've been in space for barely a generation." "Class dismissed," Owen announced, his voice carrying authority. "Everyone out. Cadet Ron, you stay." The other cadets filed out slowly, many glancing back. A Delphon female named Nira touched Ron's arm as she passed. "Don't do this," she whispered. Ron shook her off. When the hall emptied, Owen turned back to Ron. "You're upset because I corrected you in front of others. I understand, but that's what training is. You humiliated me. I showed you a weakness in your stance. That's my job." Ron took a step forward. "Your job is to teach warriors. But you're not a warrior. Look at you. No claws, no scales, no natural weapons. Humans are prey animals pretending to be predators." Owen felt his own patience wearing thin, but he kept his voice level. "You should leave now, Cadet. We'll discuss this tomorrow when you've cooled down." "I challenge you," Ron said. "A real fight, no rules. Prove you're worthy to teach me. That's not how this works. Then you're a coward as well as weak." Owen stood still for 3 full seconds. He had been trained to control his reactions, to think before acting, but he also knew that sometimes words didn't work. Some lessons had to be learned the hard way. "All right," Owen said quietly. "If you throw a punch at me, I will defend myself. Once that happens, this becomes assault. You'll face a tribunal. Is that what you want?" Ron smiled, showing all his teeth. "My family has influence. You're just a human instructor. Who do you think they'll believe?" "The security cameras," Owen replied, pointing to the corners of the hall. Ron's smile faltered for just a moment. Then his pride overrode his common sense. "I don't care." The Vorath lunged forward, throwing a heavy punch aimed at Owen's head. The strike had enough force to shatter bone. But Owen wasn't there anymore. He had moved inside Ron's reach, too close for the bigger cadet to generate power. Owen's elbow struck Ron's forearm, redirecting the punch past his shoulder. Ron tried to grab Owen to use his strength advantage in a grapple. Owen dropped low, swept Ron's front leg exactly as he had predicted, and used the cadet's own momentum to send him crashing to the mat again. This time Owen didn't give him space to recover. He secured Ron's arm, applying pressure to the elbow joint. "Yield," Owen said calmly. Ron tried to power out of the hold. Owen increased the pressure. The Vorath's scales might protect against cuts and impacts, but joints were joints. Ligaments could only take so much stress. "Yield," Owen repeated. Ron roared and tried to roll. Owen rode the movement, maintaining control. He shifted his weight, and suddenly Ron's shoulder was being leveraged against his own body mass. The cadet had two choices: submit or suffer a dislocation. Ron's roar became a grunt of pain. "I yield." Owen released him immediately and stepped back. Ron lay on the mat, breathing hard, his arm cradled against his chest. The shoulder wasn't dislocated, but it would be sore for days. "You attacked an instructor," Owen said. "Security will be here in about 30 seconds. The cameras recorded everything. When they ask me what happened, I'll tell the truth. You challenged me, I declined, and you attacked anyway. What happens next is up to the academy." As if on cue, the hall doors burst open. 3 security officers rushed in, weapons drawn. They saw Ron on the ground and Owen standing calmly nearby. "Lieutenant Davis, are you injured?" the lead officer asked. "No," Owen replied, "but Cadet Ron needs medical attention. Possible shoulder injury." They called for a medical team while one officer reviewed the security footage on her handheld device. Her expression darkened as she watched. "Cadet Ron, you're under arrest for assault. You have the right to—" "I know my rights," Ron muttered. He glared at Owen as the medics arrived. "This isn't over." Owen said nothing. He simply watched as they took Ron away. When the hall emptied again, he sat down on the mat and let out a long breath. His hands were shaking slightly from the adrenaline. Not from fear, but from the effort of holding back. He could have ended the fight in multiple ways, most of them far more violent. But that wasn't who he was anymore. He had left that version of himself behind when he left Special Operations, or so he kept telling himself. 3 days after the incident, Owen sat in the Academy's administrative building waiting for the disciplinary hearing to begin. The room was designed to accommodate multiple species, with adjustable seating and environmental controls. Owen had dressed in his formal uniform, complete with his service ribbons. He rarely wore them, preferring to let his teaching speak for itself. Commander Tellus entered first. The Quinn officer looked like a cross between a mantis and a diplomat, with forearms and compound eyes that missed nothing. She took her position at the center of the panel. 2 other officers joined her, representing different coalition species and military branches. "This hearing will now begin," Tellus announced. "We are here to review the incident between Lieutenant Owen Davis and Cadet Ron of Vorath Prime. Lieutenant Davis, please stand." Owen stood, his posture military straight. "You are not accused of wrongdoing," Tellus continued. "However, Cadet Ron's family has filed a formal complaint. They claim you used excessive force against their son. They are demanding your dismissal from the Academy faculty." Owen had expected this. Wealthy families often tried to protect their children from consequences. "I understand, Commander. Before we review the evidence, Cadet Ron's father wishes to address the panel via communication link." A holographic display activated, showing a massive Vorath male wearing elaborate military decorations. General Voth, Ron's father, looked even more imposing than his son. His scales were darker, marked with scars from decades of combat. "Commanders," General Voth began, his voice resonating through the speakers. "My son is a warrior from a proud lineage. For generations, my family has served in the military. When I sent Ron to this academy, I expected him to be trained by qualified instructors. Instead, he was humiliated and injured by a human." Tellus's antennae twitched. "General, your son attacked Lieutenant Davis unprovoked." "So claims the human," Voth replied. "But consider the facts. Humans are physically weak compared to most species in the Coalition. They lack natural weapons, armor, or enhanced strength. How could a lone human defeat a trained Vorath warrior without using unfair advantages? Perhaps hidden weapons? Perhaps surprise attacks?" One of the other panel members, a stout Grimnar officer named Boruk, leaned forward. "Are you suggesting Lieutenant Davis cheated in some way?" "I am suggesting that humans do not belong in positions of combat instruction," Voth said bluntly. "They are too fragile, too inexperienced. Earth has been at war for barely a century on the galactic stage. We Vorath have been warriors for 10,000 years. No offense to Lieutenant Davis personally, but his species simply lacks the qualifications. Owen kept his expression neutral, but he felt the familiar weight of prejudice. He had heard variations of this argument countless times since humanity joined the coalition. Tellus gestured to her display. General, we have reviewed the security footage. Would you like us to play it for this hearing? Voth's expression flickered with uncertainty. I have seen the footage. It shows my son on the ground. It does not show what happened before the cameras activated fully. The cameras are motion activated and record constantly during training hours, Tellus replied. We have complete footage from multiple angles. Lieutenant Davis, permission to display? Granted, Commander, Owen said. The holographic display switched to show the training hall from above. The panel watched as Owen corrected Ron's stance, demonstrated the throw, and then dismissed the class. They watched Ron refuse to leave, escalate the confrontation, and throw the first punch. They watched Owen defend himself with minimal force, securing Ron in a submission hold until the cadet yielded. The total fight lasted 28 seconds. When the footage ended, silence filled the room. General Voth's face had darkened. My son should not have struck first. That was dishonorable. However, the force used in response was appropriate and controlled, Tellus interrupted. Lieutenant Davis could have broken your son's arm, dislocated his shoulder, or caused severe injury. Instead, he applied only enough pressure to secure submission. Medical reports confirm Cadet Ron suffered minor bruising and temporary joint pain. No lasting damage. Another panel member, a feathered aviax named Cree, spoke up. General Voth, with respect, your son challenged an instructor to illegal combat. He then assaulted that instructor when his challenge was declined. These are serious violations of Academy regulations. Voth's jaw clenched. My son acted foolishly, but he acted out of pride and honor, which are valued in our culture. This human humiliated him in front of his peers. The human corrected his stance, Boric said. That is called teaching. Owen spoke for the first time since the footage played. General Voth, may I address you directly? Tellus nodded permission. Voth gestured for Owen to continue. Your son is a capable warrior, Owen said. He has excellent strength and natural advantages, but he lacks discipline and adaptability. Those are skills I was trying to teach him. The demonstration on the mat was not meant to humiliate. It was meant to show him that strength alone is not enough. You think you can teach my son about combat? Voth asked, his tone challenging. I think I can teach him to fight smarter, Owen replied. Vorath warriors are formidable in direct confrontation. But what happens when you face an enemy who won't fight directly? What happens when your strength is neutralized? Such enemies are cowards. Such enemies win, Owen said flatly. Ask the Sarkoth Empire. They thought humans would be easy targets. Soft, weak, no natural defenses. They learned otherwise. The room went quiet. The Sarkoth War was still fresh in coalition memory. Humanity had been attacked by a technologically superior empire and had fought them to a standstill through unconventional tactics and sheer determination. Tellus consulted her notes. Lieutenant Davis, I see you served in that conflict. Your record is heavily redacted, but it shows you were part of Earth's Special Operations Forces. Is that correct? Owen hesitated. He never discussed his past. Yes, Commander. How many operations did you participate in? That information is classified. Did you engage in direct combat with Sarkoth forces? Multiple times. Kree's feathers ruffled with interest. The Sarkoth are known to be excellent warriors, stronger and faster than most species including Vorath, yet humanity defeated them through tactical superiority. We didn't defeat them, Owen corrected. We survived them. There's a difference. General Voth studied Owen with new interest. The human's humble response carried more weight than boasting would have. Lieutenant, why do you teach instead of serve in active combat? Owen took a breath before answering. Because teaching is more important than fighting. If I train these cadets well, they'll save more lives than I ever could alone. Tellus nodded slowly. General Voth, this panel has reached a decision. Cadet Ron violated Academy regulations by assaulting an instructor. However, we recognize that cultural differences and wounded pride contributed to his actions. Therefore, our ruling is as follows. She read from her datapad. Cadet Ron will be placed on probationary status for the remainder of the academic term. He will continue his combat training under Lieutenant Davis. If he successfully completes this probation, the incident will be noted in his record but will not result in expulsion. If he fails or commits any further violations, he will be immediately dismissed. Voth's expression hardened. You're forcing my son to continue training with the human who humiliated him? We are giving him the opportunity to learn from someone who bested him, Tellus replied. That is how warriors grow. Lieutenant Davis, do you accept this arrangement? Owen had been expecting to be vindicated and move on. Now he was being asked to personally oversee the cadet who had attacked him. It would be easier to let Ron be someone else's problem. But he thought about what he had told Voth. Teaching matters. These cadets would become officers, leaders, protectors of coalition worlds. I accept, Owen said. Tellus's antennae relaxed slightly. Then it is decided. Cadet Ron will report to Lieutenant Davis tomorrow for private instruction. General Voth, do you have any final comments? The Vorath general stared at Owen for a long moment. Teach him well, human. If he fails, it reflects on my family's honor. I'll teach him the best I can, Owen replied. What he does with that teaching is up to him. The communication link closed. The panel dismissed Owen and prepared to summon Ron for his portion of the hearing. As Owen left the administrative building, he wondered if he had just made his life significantly more difficult. Teaching a talented cadet was rewarding. Teaching a talented cadet who hated you? That was going to be a challenge. But then again, Owen had never been one to choose the easy path. Ron arrived at the private training hall exactly on time, which surprised Owen. The Vorath cadet stood in the doorway, his posture stiff and formal. His arm was no longer in the support wrap, but he moved it carefully. Cadet Ron reporting as ordered, sir, Ron said, his voice devoid of emotion. Owen gestured to the center of the mat. Come in. Close the door behind you. Ron did as instructed, moving like a prisoner walking to execution. Owen watched him carefully. The cadet's eyes were fixed on the floor, avoiding direct eye contact. In Vorath culture, that was a sign of shame. Sit down, Owen said, settling onto the mat himself. Ron hesitated, then sat cross-legged across from Owen. The silence stretched between them. Owen broke it first. You don't want to be here. No, sir. You think this is punishment? Yes, sir, Owen nodded. You're partially right. You attacked an instructor. There had to be consequences. But I didn't ask for you to be assigned to me for punishment. I asked for it because I think you have potential. Ron's eyes flickered up, then down again. Potential to be humiliated further? Potential to be better than you are now, Owen replied. You're strong, fast, and your species has incredible natural advantages. But you rely on those advantages too much. My people have won thousands of battles through strength. And how many have you lost because you met someone stronger? Owen asked. Ron's jaw tightened. We do not speak of defeats. That's exactly your problem, Owen said. You can't learn from what you won't acknowledge. Every loss is a lesson. Every defeat teaches you something victory can't. My father says only the weak make excuses for losing. Owen let that sit for a moment. Your father is a decorated general. I'm sure he's won many battles. Has he ever lost? Never, Ron said with pride. Then he's either lying or he's never fought anyone truly dangerous, Owen said bluntly. Everyone loses eventually. The question is what you do after. Ron's head snapped up, anger flashing in his eyes. You insult my father? I'm telling you the truth, Owen replied calmly. I've lost fights. I've been beaten, injured, and defeated. But I learned from every single loss. That's why I'm still alive. The anger in Ron's expression shifted to confusion. You admit you've been defeated? Warriors do not confess weakness. It's not weakness to acknowledge reality, Owen said. You lost to me 3 days ago. That's a fact. You can either pretend it didn't happen and learn nothing, or you can figure out why it happened and become better. Ron was quiet for a long time. Finally he spoke, his voice softer. How did you defeat me? I am stronger, larger, and my species evolved for combat. You should not have been able to stop me. Because I learned to fight from a position of weakness, Owen explained. Humans are not apex predators. We're not the strongest, fastest, or toughest species on our own planet. We evolved by being smart, adaptable, and stubborn. We learned to hunt creatures that could kill us with one strike. We developed weapons, tactics, and fighting styles specifically designed to defeat stronger opponents. You used tricks. I used leverage and technique, Owen corrected. Every move I made was based on physics and body mechanics. Your strength didn't matter because I didn't oppose it directly. I redirected it, used it against you. Ron frowned, thinking, "This is how humans fight?" "This is how we survive," Owen said. "We assume our enemy is stronger. We assume we're outmatched. Then we find ways to win anyway." For the first time since entering the room, Ron met Owen's eyes directly. "Will you teach me this?" "That's why you're here." Owen stood and offered his hand to help Ron up. This time the Vorath took it. They moved to the center of the mat and Owen began the lesson. He started with basics: balance, weight distribution, how to read an opponent's movement. Ron struggled at first, trying to force techniques through strength. Owen corrected him patiently, demonstrating again and again. "Stop trying to muscle through it," Owen said after Ron failed a joint lock for the 5th time. "Feel where my weight is. Feel the angle of my arm. The technique works because of geometry, not force." Ron tried again, this time focusing on the mechanics rather than overpowering. The lock clicked into place smoothly. Owen tapped the mat in submission. Ron released him immediately, surprise evident on his face. "I did it." "You did," Owen confirmed. "Now do it again." They practiced for an hour. Ron learned throws, locks, and defensive positions. Each technique focused on using minimal force for maximum effect. Slowly, the Vorath's frustration transformed into something else: curiosity, interest. During a water break, Ron asked the question that had been bothering him. "Lieutenant, why do you teach? Your record shows you were a special operations soldier. You could still be fighting." Owen took a long drink before answering. "I fought for 8 years. Participated in more combat operations than I can count. I saw friends die. I killed people. Eventually I realized something." "What?" "That teaching one generation of soldiers prevents the deaths of the next," Owen said. "If these cadets learn to fight smart, they might not have to fight as long or as hard as I did." Ron considered this. "My father believes glory comes from battle." "Your father is wrong," Owen said. "Glory comes from protecting people. Battle is just one way to do that, and usually the worst way." They resumed training. As the session continued, Ron's movements became more refined. He started to understand the principles behind the techniques. His natural strength, when combined with proper mechanics, made him formidable. Near the end of the session, Owen had Ron spar with him at half speed. The Vorath attempted a grab and Owen showed him how to counter. Then Ron tried the counter himself, and for the first time he successfully executed a technique against his instructor. Owen hit the mat and smiled. "Good. That's exactly right." Ron helped him up, and for the first time his expression showed something other than shame or anger. It might have been pride. "The earned kind. Same time tomorrow?" Owen asked. "Yes, sir," Ron replied. Then quietly he added, "Thank you." Over the following weeks, their training sessions became routine. Ron proved to be a dedicated student once his pride stopped interfering. He asked questions, practiced between sessions, and even started studying human martial arts history. The other cadets noticed the change. In regular classes, Ron began helping his squad mates instead of dominating them. He shared the techniques Owen taught him, explaining the principles in ways his fellow Vorath could understand. Nira, his Delphon squad mate, approached Owen after one class. "Whatever you're doing with Ron, it's working. He's different now. Better. He's learning that strength is more than physical," Owen said. "He talks about you differently too," Nira added. "He called you a worthy opponent. In Vorath culture, that's significant respect." Owen nodded but said nothing. Respect was earned through actions, not words. Time would tell if Ron had truly changed. The test came during a sparring tournament the Academy held monthly. Cadets from all years competed in supervised matches. Ron was matched against a senior cadet, a Vorath named Gresh who was known for his brutal fighting style. Owen watched from the sidelines as the match began. Gresh charged immediately, using raw aggression to overwhelm opponents. The old Ron would have met force with force, leading to a contest of pure strength, but Ron didn't do that. He sidestepped, redirected Gresh's momentum, and used a perfectly executed throw to put the larger cadet on his back. The match ended in seconds. Ron helped Gresh up, showing the same courtesy Owen had always shown him. As he left the mat, Ron caught Owen's eye and nodded slightly. Owen returned the gesture. After the tournament, Ron found Owen in the instructor's office. "Sir, I wanted to thank you." "For what?" "For not giving up on me," Ron said. "I was arrogant and foolish. I attacked you because my pride was hurt. You could have had me expelled. Instead, you taught me. You did the work, Owen replied. I just showed you the path. Ron straightened. My father contacted me yesterday. He heard about the tournament. He said I fought with wisdom instead of rage. He said you have taught me well. High praise, Owen said. He wishes to apologize to you, Ron continued. He judged you unfairly because you're human. He understands now that you are a true warrior, even if you fight differently than he expected. Owen felt something loosen in his chest. Respect earned, not demanded. Tell your father I appreciate that. Ron nodded and turned to leave, then paused. Lieutenant, may I ask you something personal? Go ahead. Do you still think about the fighting you did? Before you became a teacher? Owen was quiet for a moment. Every day. Does it ever get easier? No, Owen admitted. But teaching helps. Knowing that you and others like you might not have to make the same hard choices I did. That makes it worth it. Ron absorbed this, then spoke with conviction. When I graduate, I want to be the kind of officer you are. One who protects others, not one who seeks glory. Then you've already learned the most important lesson, Owen said. The emergency alarm cut through the quiet evening like a blade. Owen was in his quarters reviewing training reports when the sound started, followed immediately by his communicator buzzing with an urgent message. All senior instructors were to report to the command center immediately. He arrived to find Commander Tellis already coordinating with Academy staff and senior cadets. The holographic display showed a star system 30 light-years away, a red icon blinking over a mining colony. Status update, Tellis commanded as Owen entered. A communications officer responded. Colony Beacon 7 has been attacked by Krell Syndicate raiders. Their security force is overwhelmed. Civilian casualties are mounting. They're requesting immediate assistance. Owen studied the display. Beacon 7 was a small operation, maybe 200 people total. The Krell were notorious pirates who preyed on isolated outposts. They were violent, experienced, and had no regard for civilian lives. Coalition response time? Tellis asked. Nearest military vessel is 6 hours away, the officer replied. Tellis's antennae twitched in agitation. 6 hours was far too long. We have a fast response shuttle that can reach them in 90 minutes. But our security staff is limited and the Krell will be well armed and prepared. Use the senior cadets, Owen said. It's unorthodox, but they're trained and ready. Several instructors objected immediately. Sending cadets into active combat was against regulations, but Tellis raised one of her 4 hands, silencing them. Lieutenant Davis makes a valid point. These cadets will be officers soon. They need to understand what that means. However, I will not send them without experienced leadership. She turned to Owen. You will lead the ground team. Select your instructors and senior cadets. You have 15 minutes to prepare. Owen nodded and left immediately. He moved through the academy halls, mentally selecting personnel. He needed people who could think under pressure, who wouldn't freeze when facing real danger. When he reached the senior cadet barracks, he found Ron, Nira, and several others preparing for sleep. Full combat gear, Owen announced. We deploy in 12 minutes. The cadets scrambled without question. Ron approached Owen while strapping on his armor. What's the situation, sir? Mining colony under attack. Hostages. We're the closest response unit, Owen explained briefly. This isn't a training exercise. The enemy will try to kill you. Do you understand? Yes, sir, Ron replied, his voice steady. Nira finished checking her equipment and joined them. How many hostiles? Unknown. Krell usually operate in groups of 10 to 20. Expect them to be armed and experienced, Owen said. Listen to orders and stay together. Your goal is to protect civilians, not be heroes. The shuttle lifted off 12 minutes later. Owen sat in the troop bay with 2 other instructors and 8 senior cadets, including Ron and Nira. The mood was tense but controlled. These cadets had been training for this moment, even if they hadn't expected it to come so soon. During the flight, Owen briefed them using the limited intelligence they had. The Krell had seized the main mining facility and were holding hostages in the central processing building. They were demanding the colony surrender its entire resource stockpile and threatening to execute prisoners if their demands weren't met. Standard Krell tactics, Owen explained. They want to grab resources and escape before coalition forces arrive. They'll be on edge, trigger-happy. That makes them dangerous but also predictable. Ron studied the holographic layout of the colony. The processing building has multiple access points. If we create a distraction at the main entrance, could a smaller team infiltrate through the maintenance tunnels? Owen looked at the Vorith with approval. Exactly what I was thinking. You've been paying attention. You taught me to think tactically, sir. They discussed the plan during the remaining flight time. The main force would engage the Krell at the colony's perimeter, drawing their attention. Owen would lead a 5-person infiltration team through underground maintenance tunnels to reach the hostages. It was risky, but direct assault would get hostages killed. The shuttle touched down behind a rocky outcropping, out of sight from the colony. The team moved quickly and quietly across the rough terrain. Owen had selected Ron, Nira, and 2 other cadets for the infiltration team. The rest would create the distraction with the other instructors. They found the tunnel entrance concealed behind a ventilation station. Owen checked his weapon, a compact energy rifle standard for coalition forces. From this point forward, assume hostiles around every corner. Move quietly, watch your corners, and follow my signals. He started into the darkness and the others followed. The tunnels were tight, barely wide enough for Ron's broad shoulders. Emergency lighting cast everything in dim red. Owen moved with practiced ease, his weapon raised, checking angles instinctively. They encountered the first Krell guard at a junction. Owen spotted him first, a hunched figure with rough skin and multiple eyes. The pirate was facing away, distracted by his communicator. Owen signaled for the team to stop, then moved forward silently. The guard never knew what hit him. Owen struck precisely, and the Krell dropped unconscious. Nira stared at Owen with new understanding. His movements weren't those of an academy instructor. They were the movements of someone who had done this many times before. "Keep moving," Owen whispered. They progressed deeper into the tunnel system. The sounds of the colony grew louder. Machinery, distant shouts, weapon fire from the distraction team's engagement. The Krell were responding to the perimeter threat, which meant Owen's team had a window of opportunity. They reached an access ladder leading up into the processing building. Owen climbed first, easing open the hatch slowly. He scanned the room above, his enhanced visor showing heat signatures. 8 hostiles, approximately 20 hostages, he signaled the team. 8 enemies, civilians present, extreme caution required. Then he pulled up a schematic on his wrist display and began assigning positions. Ron would take the elevated catwalk with a precision rifle. Nira and another cadet would secure the east exit. The 4th cadet would protect the hostages once the action started. Owen would handle the rest. He waited for everyone to get into position, watching the enemy through his scope. The Krell were arguing among themselves, distracted by the fighting outside. Their leader, a massive brute with cybernetic implants, was shouting orders into a communicator. Owen activated his team channel. "On my mark. 3, 2, 1, mark." He burst through the hatch, his rifle already firing. 2 Krell dropped before the others could react. Ron's shot from the catwalk took down a 3rd. The remaining Krell scrambled for cover, returning fire. Energy bolts filled the air. Owen moved between containers and machinery, firing with precision. Each shot was calculated, controlled. This wasn't the careful instruction of the academy. This was combat experience honed through years of operations. A Krell charged him with a blade, thinking close combat would neutralize his weapon advantage. Owen sidestepped, used the alien's momentum to throw him into a support beam, and finished him with a single strike to the neck. The movement was so smooth it looked rehearsed. Ron watched from above, realizing the truth. Owen hadn't just been a soldier. He had been something far more dangerous. The fight was over in less than 2 minutes. 8 Krell down, no casualties on Owen's team. The hostages huddled together, terrified but alive. "Nira, start evacuating civilians through the tunnel," Owen ordered. "Ron, maintain overwatch. The rest of you, secure the exits." But then alarms started blaring. More Krell were coming, alerted by the firefight. Owen checked his ammunition and assessed their position. They had the hostages, but they were now trapped in the building with reinforcements incoming. "Change of plans," Owen said calmly. "We hold this position until the civilians are clear. Then we withdraw through the tunnel. Ron, how many hostiles approaching?" Ron checked his scope. "At least 15. They're organizing for an assault." Owen nodded. "Then we give them something to think about. Everyone to defensive positions. Make every shot count." The Krell hit them hard. They came through multiple entrances, firing wildly. But Owen's team held their ground. The cadets followed his instructions precisely, using the techniques he had taught them. Cover, fire discipline, controlled retreat. Ron found himself fighting side by side with Owen, watching the human work. Every movement had purpose. Owen didn't waste energy or ammunition. He made the battlefield work for him, using the environment to channel the enemy into killing zones. A massive Krell, even larger than the leader, charged through the suppressive fire. Its armor absorbed several hits. Owen didn't panic. He targeted the support cable of an overhead crane, severing it with 3 precise shots. The crane's load, several tons of mining equipment, dropped directly onto the charging Krell. Last group of civilians entering the tunnel, Nira reported. 30 seconds. Copy that, Owen replied. Ron, prepare to withdraw. Sir, you're exposed from this angle, Ron called down. You should pull back first. Negative. I hold until everyone else is clear. It was an order, but Ron refused. He had learned from Owen that protecting others came first. He descended from the catwalk and positioned himself to cover Owen's withdrawal. Then I hold with you. Owen met his eyes and nodded once. Together, they laid down suppressive fire as the rest of the team withdrew. When Nira signaled the tunnel system was a maze of passages, but Owen navigated without hesitation. He had memorized the layout during the approach, a habit from his special operations days. Behind him, Ron and the others struggled to keep pace with his relentless speed. Lieutenant, slow down, Nira called out. The civilians can't move this fast. Owen stopped and turned back. She was right. The rescued hostages included elderly miners and injured workers. They were shuffling through the tight spaces as quickly as they could, but fear and exhaustion were slowing them down. Ron, take point, Owen ordered. Get these people to the shuttle. I'll stay back and make sure we're not followed. Sir, we should stay together, Ron protested. That's not a suggestion, Cadet, Owen said, his voice firm. Your job is to protect these civilians. Mine is to buy you the time to do it. Now move. Ron hesitated, then nodded. He understood now that orders existed for a reason. He gathered the group and led them forward through the tunnels. Owen waited until they disappeared around a corner, then turned his attention to the passage behind them. He didn't have to wait long. The hatch they had sealed was blown open with explosive charges. Krell poured through, at least a dozen of them, armed and enraged. Their comrades had been killed, their hostages freed. They wanted revenge. Owen triggered the charges he had placed during their retreat. The tunnel ceiling collapsed, crushing 2 Krell and temporarily blocking the passage. But he knew it wouldn't hold them for long. These were experienced raiders, not academy cadets. He fell back to a defensive position where the tunnel widened into a junction. Here he had multiple angles to work with and enough space to move. The Krell would have to come at him through a narrow choke point, which negated their numbers advantage. They came cautiously now, having learned their lesson about rushing blindly. Owen caught glimpses of movement in the darkness ahead. They were trying to flank him, using side passages he might not know about. But Owen had studied every inch of these tunnels. He threw a flashbang around the corner, waited for the detonation, then moved quickly through the disoriented enemies. His rifle fired in controlled bursts. 3 Krell dropped before they recovered. The others scattered, seeking cover. Owen pressed the advantage. This was what he had trained for during those classified years in special operations, fighting in tight spaces outnumbered with lives depending on his success. It wasn't glorious or heroic. It was simply what needed to be done. A Krell with a heavy weapon tried to lay down suppressive fire. Owen went low, rolled behind a support pillar and came up firing. The heavy weapon user fell. Owen grabbed the weapon before it hit the ground and used it to clear the next section of tunnel. Meanwhile, Ron was leading the civilians toward safety when his communicator crackled. It was Nira, who had stopped to check something on her datapad. Ron, I accessed Lieutenant Davis's service record, she said quietly. The unredacted parts. Why would you do that? Ron asked, keeping his eyes on the path ahead. Because I wanted to understand who we're following, Nira replied. Do you know what the border wars were? The conflict between humans and the Sarkoth Empire, Ron said. Lieutenant Davis mentioned he served in it. He didn't just serve, Nira continued. He was part of Earth's Tier 1 Special Operations Units, the groups that only get sent when everything else has failed. His record shows 17 deep penetration missions into Sarkoth-controlled space. 17 times he went behind enemy lines with small teams to accomplish impossible objectives. Ron felt something cold settle in his stomach. How many of those teams made it back? His did. Every single time, Nira said. There are commendations from 5 different coalition species. Citations for actions that are still classified. Ron, the man we've been learning from, isn't just a combat instructor. He's one of humanity's most decorated special operations soldiers. Ron remembered the first time he had attacked Owen, the ease with which the human had defeated him, the restraint Owen had shown. And now, watching how Owen fought in real combat, Ron understood. His instructor had been holding back during every training session, every demonstration, every spar. Owen wasn't a teacher who had once been a soldier. He was a soldier who had chosen to teach. Back in the tunnels, Owen was running low on ammunition. He had dropped 6 more Krell, but the rest had learned to be cautious. They were trying to wait him out, knowing he couldn't hold this position forever. Owen checked his options. He could fall back, but that would let them get closer to the civilians. He could try to negotiate, but Krell didn't negotiate once they were committed to a fight. That left only one option: make them think twice about continuing. He pulled out his last 2 grenades, set them on delayed timers, and placed them strategically. Then he activated his communicator. "This is Lieutenant Davis to Krell forces. You have 10 seconds to withdraw before this entire section collapses. Your choice." Silence. Then laughter from the darkness ahead. "Humans are weak. You bluff to cover your fear." 9 seconds, Owen replied calmly. "We will kill you and then hunt down the ones who escaped." 8 seconds. More laughter. The Krell didn't believe him. They thought he was trying to buy time. Owen used those final seconds to position himself behind the sturdiest support beam in the junction. The grenades detonated simultaneously. The explosion wasn't massive, but it was precisely placed. The already damaged tunnel ceiling gave way. Tons of rock and metal crashing down. The Krell's laughter turned to screams. Owen was thrown from his feet by the concussion, his ears ringing. Dust and debris filled the air. When the rumbling stopped, he checked himself for injuries. Bruised, cut in a few places, but mobile. The tunnel behind him was completely blocked. Nothing was getting through that for hours. He stumbled forward, following the path Ron had taken. His legs felt heavy and his vision was slightly blurred from the concussion. But he kept moving. The civilians needed to reach the shuttle. His job wasn't done. He caught up with the group just as they emerged from the tunnel exit. Ron saw him first, covered in dust and blood, limping but still on his feet. "Lieutenant!" Ron rushed over to support him. "Are you injured?" "Nothing serious," Owen said, though his ribs suggested otherwise. "Get these people on the shuttle. The Krell won't be following us, but we need to leave before reinforcements arrive." They loaded the civilians quickly. The distraction team had already returned, having successfully drawn off most of the Krell forces. The shuttle lifted off within minutes, leaving the ravaged colony behind. Coalition military would arrive soon to secure the area and deal with the remaining raiders. In the shuttle's medical bay, a medic examined Owen. Cracked ribs, mild concussion, various cuts and bruises. Nothing that wouldn't heal. The medic gave him pain medication and ordered rest. Ron sat down beside Owen's bunk. "You could have died back there." "That was always a possibility," Owen replied. "You didn't tell us you were special operations." Owen was quiet for a moment. "Would it have changed how you learned?" "I don't know," Ron admitted. "Maybe I would have been too intimidated to question your methods." "That's why I didn't mention it," Owen said. "I wanted you to learn because the techniques work, not because of my reputation. A good technique should stand on its own merit." Ron looked at his hands, thinking, "When I attacked you that day in the training hall, you could have seriously hurt me. You had the skill to do it, but you didn't. You were a student making a mistake, not an enemy trying to kill me," Owen said. "There's a difference. But in those tunnels with the Krell, you were different. You moved like—" Ron struggled to find the words. "Like a soldier," Owen finished. "Because that's what the situation required. Teaching and fighting are different skills. I prefer teaching, but I remember how to fight when necessary." Nira entered the medical bay holding her datapad. "Lieutenant, the casualty report just came in. 43 civilians rescued, 0 deaths among our team. The Krell lost more than half their force. It's being called a successful operation." Owen nodded but didn't look pleased. "People still died before we got there. That's not success. That's just limiting the damage." His words hung in the air. The cadets realized something important about their instructor. He didn't see combat as glory or adventure. He saw it as tragedy that sometimes couldn't be avoided. Ron stood and saluted formally. Sir, thank you for keeping us alive. Thank you for following orders, Owen replied. Especially when you didn't want to. That took discipline. After Ron and Nira left, Owen closed his eyes and tried to rest. But sleep didn't come easily. The memories never did after combat. He saw the Krell he had killed, the civilians who had died before they arrived, the fear in the hostages' eyes. This was why he taught. So maybe the next generation wouldn't have to make the hard choices he had made. So maybe they would be smart enough and skilled enough to prevent situations like this, rather than just respond to them. The shuttle jumped to faster-than-light travel, carrying them back to the academy. Owen finally drifted into an uneasy sleep, his dreams filled with tunnels and shadows. News of the Beacon 7 rescue spread quickly through the academy. Within hours, everyone knew that senior cadets had participated in a real combat operation. The story grew with each retelling, becoming more dramatic, more heroic. Owen avoided the attention. He spent 2 days in medical recovery, then returned to teaching as if nothing had changed. But everything had changed. Students looked at him differently now. Even instructors who had questioned his qualifications before now treated him with quiet respect. Commander Tellis summoned him to her office on his 3rd day back. Lieutenant Davis, the Coalition Defense Council wants to commend you and the cadets for your actions at Beacon 7. There will be a formal ceremony. That's not necessary, Commander, Owen said. We did what anyone would have done. Not anyone, Tellis replied. Most officers would have waited for proper military response. You made a difficult decision and saved lives. That deserves recognition. Owen didn't argue further. He understood that ceremonies weren't really about individuals. They were about showing young officers what the Coalition valued. If this recognition encouraged cadets to put civilian lives first, then it served a purpose. The ceremony was held in the Academy's main hall. Owen stood with the cadets who had participated in the mission. They wore their formal uniforms, looking uncomfortable with the attention. Medals were presented, speeches were given, and the audience applauded. But the most meaningful moment came after the official ceremony ended. General Voth, Ron's father, approached Owen directly. The massive Vorath general looked at the human instructor for a long moment before speaking. Lieutenant Davis, I owe you an apology, Voth said formally. When my son was disciplined, I believed you had humiliated him unfairly. I questioned your qualifications to teach warriors. I was wrong. You were protecting your son, Owen replied. I understand that. No, I was protecting my pride, Voth corrected. My son's failure reflected on me, or so I believed. But Ron has told me what you taught him. Not just fighting techniques, but wisdom. You showed him that strength alone is not enough. That a true warrior adapts, learns, and protects others. Voth glanced at his son, who stood nearby with Nira and the other cadets. Ron says you saved his life at Beacon 7. That you held back enemies alone so the civilians could escape. He says you fought like a demon from ancient stories, but with purpose and control. Ron saved his own life by following orders and keeping the civilians safe, Owen said. That's what I taught him to do. You taught him to be better than I ever could, Voth admitted. I trained him to be strong and fierce. You taught him to be wise and compassionate. Those are harder lessons and more important ones. The general extended his hand. Owen shook it, feeling the incredible strength in that grip. But Voth was careful, controlled. Perhaps he too had learned something about strength and restraint. After the ceremony, Ron found Owen in the training hall. The Vorath was carrying a small wrapped package. Sir, may I speak with you? Of course, Owen said, sitting on the mat. Ron joined him. I wanted to give you this, Ron said, handing over the package. It's a tradition among my people. When a warrior learns something important from a mentor, they offer a gift of respect. Owen unwrapped it carefully. Inside was a book, bound in leather-like material. The title was in both Vorath script and Coalition standard, Philosophy of Adaptive Combat. I wrote it, Ron explained. Everything you taught me I put into words so I wouldn't forget, but also so I could share it with others. With your permission, I would like to distribute it to other Vorath cadets. Many of them think, as I once did, that strength is everything. They need to learn what you taught me. Owen paged through the book. It was thorough, thoughtful, and surprisingly well written. Ron had taken the lessons and expanded on them, applying them to Vorath culture and military traditions. This is impressive work. I had a good teacher, Ron said. Sir, may I ask you a personal question? Go ahead. Why did you leave Special Operations? You were clearly skilled at it. You could have continued to serve in combat roles. Owen closed the book and set it aside. I lost count of how many people I killed during the border wars. I don't say that to brag or to make you feel sorry for me. It's just fact. I was good at combat because I had to be. Earth needed soldiers who could fight enemies stronger and more advanced than us. He paused, choosing his words carefully. But every person I killed left a mark. Not just on my record, but on my soul. I started having nightmares, seeing their faces, wondering if there had been another way, a better way, to accomplish the mission without so much death. Ron listened quietly, understanding the weight of such admissions. One day I realized that if I stayed in special operations, I would eventually become someone I didn't want to be. Owen continued. Someone who killed easily, without thought or conscience. So I requested a transfer to training command. I figured if I could teach the next generation to fight smarter, maybe they wouldn't have to kill as many people as I did. Do you regret your time in special operations? Ron asked. No, Owen said firmly. I did what needed to be done, and I did it as well as I could. But I'm glad that part of my life is over. Teaching feels like redemption, if that makes sense. It does, Ron said. Sir, I want to tell you something. When I first attacked you, I thought humans were weak pretenders. I thought strength and aggression were the only things that mattered in a warrior. You proved me wrong in 30 seconds, but I was too proud to understand the lesson. He gestured around the training hall. Now I understand. Humanity didn't become powerful by being the strongest or the toughest. You became powerful by being the smartest and the most adaptable. You learned to defeat enemies that should have destroyed you, and more importantly, you learned when not to fight at all. Owen smiled slightly. You've come a long way from the cadet who wanted to prove himself through violence. Because you showed me a better way, Ron said. I used to think my father was the greatest warrior I knew. Now I know there are different kinds of warriors. My father wins through strength and intimidation. You win through wisdom and preparation. Both have their place, but I want to be more like you. Be yourself, Owen advised. Take what I taught you and combine it with what your father taught you. Find your own path. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment. Then Nira entered the hall, followed by several other cadets from the Beacon 7 mission. Lieutenant, we wanted to thank you, Nira said. All of us. You kept us alive and taught us what real leadership looks like. You kept yourselves alive by staying calm and following your training, Owen replied. I'm proud of all of you. You performed like experienced officers, not cadets. A young cadet from the engineering track, a small furry species called Pelin, spoke up nervously. Sir, will you keep teaching after this? Some instructors are saying you might get promoted or transferred. Owen hadn't thought about that possibility. His actions at Beacon 7 would certainly be noted by higher command. Promotions often came with reassignments, but looking at these cadets, at Ron and Nira and the others who still had so much to learn, he knew what he wanted. I'm not going anywhere, Owen said. There's too much work to do here. The cadets visibly relaxed. They talked for a while about the mission, processing what they had experienced. Owen answered their questions honestly, helping them understand the difference between training scenarios and real combat. Eventually, they dispersed, heading to evening meals or study sessions. Ron stayed behind with Owen. Sir, one more question. At Beacon 7 in those tunnels, you fought like no one I've ever seen. Was that the real you? Or was the patient teacher we know the real you? Owen considered the question carefully. Both are real. I'm a teacher who knows how to fight, and a fighter who chooses to teach. The circumstances determine which one you see, but I prefer being the teacher. Because teaching is harder, Ron said with understanding. Exactly. Anyone with enough training can learn to fight. But teaching requires patience, wisdom, and the ability to see potential in others. Those are harder skills to master. Months passed. Ron graduated at the top of his class with honors in both tactics and combat instruction. During his graduation speech, he spoke about the importance of learning from everyone regardless of their species or background. He mentioned his human instructor who had taught him that true strength came from knowing your weaknesses and working to overcome them. After the ceremony, Ron approached Owen one final time as a cadet. Tomorrow he would be Ensign Ron, assigned to a coalition patrol vessel. Thank you, sir. For everything. You earned it all yourself, Owen replied. I just pointed you in the right direction. I hope to be half the officer you are, Ron said. You'll be better, Owen assured him. Because you learned from both your father and me. You have strength and wisdom. Use them both wisely." They shook hands, no longer instructor and student, but colleagues in service of the coalition. Ron joined his family and friends, ready to begin his career. Owen watched him go, feeling the familiar satisfaction that came with successfully preparing a student for the real world. He had dozens more cadets to teach, hundreds more lessons to give. The work never ended, but that was fine with him. He preferred this kind of fight, not against enemies with weapons, but against ignorance, pride, and the assumption that there was only one way to be strong. Every cadet he taught, every mind he changed, was a victory more meaningful than any combat mission. Commander Tellis appeared beside him. "You're thinking about staying and teaching, aren't you?" "Yes, Commander," Owen confirmed. "Good," she said. "Because you're better at it than anyone I've seen. You don't just teach cadets how to fight. You teach them why to fight and when not to. The Coalition needs more officers who understand that distinction." As the graduation ceremony ended and families celebrated with their newly commissioned officers, Owen returned to the training hall. Tomorrow would bring a new class of cadets, fresh students with their own pride and prejudices to overcome. Some would be like Ron, needing to learn humility. Others would need to learn confidence, but all of them would learn the same fundamental lesson, that strength came in many forms, and the wisest warriors were those who knew when to fight and when to teach. Owen smiled to himself as he prepared the next day's lesson plans. He had been a soldier, a warrior, a killer when necessary, but now he was something better. He was a teacher, shaping the future one cadet at a time, and that was the most important mission he had ever accepted.